Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson is back on Capitol Hill this morning for a second day of Senate questioning. Senators quizzed a federal judge for 13 hours yesterday on a wide range of topics. Republicans pointed to her sentencing record in child pornography cases and her work defending detainees at Guantanamo Bay.
Do you support the idea, did you support then the idea that indefinite detention of an enemy combatant is unlawful?
Respectfully, Senator, when you are an attorney and you have clients who come to you, whether they pay or not, you represent their positions before the court.
Do you believe the voice of the children is heard when 100% of the time you're sentencing those in possession of child pornography to far below what the prosecutor's asking for?
Yes, Senator, I do. Your chart does not include all of the factors that Congress has told judges to consider, including the probation office's recommendation in these cases.
Joining us now from Washington, our chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford, and chief election and campaign correspondent, Robert Costa. They've each covered at least half a dozen Supreme Court confirmation hearings. Good morning to you both. Jan, let me begin with you. This is the first time we've seen Judge Jackson defend herself against Republican lawmakers during these hearings. Senator Ted Cruz, his line of query to Judge Jackson seemed to indicate to the first black woman ever to be nominated to the Supreme Court that she's soft on crime, she's soft on pedophiles, and that she holds views that whites are somehow oppressors. What did you make of her reaction to those questions?
Well, look, I mean, I think throughout the day, I mean, she was this mix of forceful when she needed to defend herself and, then compassionate when she was talking about her family and some of her hard decisions that she's had to make as a judge, including in those child pornography cases, which she's handled as a federal trial court judge. You saw Senator Cruz, Senator Josh Hawley really kind of go after her on the allegation that she was lenient in sentencing these horrific child pornography offenders. But, Vlad, I mean, there is just no there. I mean, if you look at her sentencing in those cases, it's not out of whack with how other federal judges approach these cases. It does not take into account what we heard from those Republican senators yesterday, does not take account that her sentences were actually in line with what probation officers were recommending in those cases. So I think today they're going to move on and focus more generally on how she is maybe a lenient senator in other cases. But, there was no, they got no traction from that. And I thought what was interesting is that, you saw her personality really come through in that questioning. She was forceful, but then she was compassionate and talking about how hard those cases were. It's been very effective. I mean, it's like when you're trying, I thought yesterday, when you're trying to strike a match and it won't light, there's just no spark. You saw the Republicans trying to strike that match, but there weren't any sparks, which, from her perspective, I think that is a very good thing.
Yeah, Robert, I saw a headline in the National Review that said Josh Hawley's attacks on the judge are disingenuous.
That is the Republican consensus, at least among some senators behind the scenes. And when I pull them aside, they say that these hearings are not just about Judge Jackson. They are a prism for the upcoming midterm elections. So many of the issues that Republicans want to be talking about on the campaign trail, beyond Ukraine, beyond the economy, crime, matters of race, matters of gender, they are bringing up in these hearings. It's a reflection of issues they believe will motivate their own voters ahead of the November elections.
I'm so glad that you made that point, Robert, because I was wondering if some of that line of questioning was even relevant to why she was in the room yesterday. But I know you've been speaking with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle about this. Do you get the sense that there will be some Republicans? It's so partisan these days in Washington. Do you get the sense that any Republicans will vote for her?
Here's who I'm paying attention to, Gayle. Two of the Republican senators who voted for her confirmation last year to the federal bench, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. And late last night, Gayle, I pulled aside a few Republican senators and asked, who else? They say pay attention to retiring Republican senators who may not feel the same obligations politically to vote against Judge Jackson. They could come out in support of her in the coming days.
Jan, what do you make of Senator Cory Booker's exchange with Judge Jackson, asking about her parents and her children, getting a bit emotional? Do you believe that strategy for the Democrats is going to work?
Oh, I mean, Nate, that was striking. You know, sometimes in these hearings, there's going to be this moment where, you know, you can just feel the fight just leaves the room. And we saw that in the confirmation hearings for Justice Alito, for example. His wife burst into tears, rushed out. And I thought Senator Booker's questioning came pretty close to a moment. I mean, it was among the most powerful of the day. Not only that exchange you mentioned about her parents, but also when he asked about the high murder rates of black men, her worries for her own family. She called it anguishing, something I know she said all too well. That revealed that personal side of her. And then, of course, on the other side of the aisle, there was a misstep by Republican Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, who described her as articulate, as if that's somehow, you know, surprising for a star debater, Harvard Law grad who's been a federal judge for a decade. But I think that's going to be interesting to see how all of this, you know, what we saw with the powerful questioning from Senator Booker and then that misstep by Senator Kennedy, how that affects some of the tone of today's questioning.
Well, we know the numbers are in her favor. You know, she certainly is going to be confirmed. Do you think this is still the best way to do this, guys, knowing what the outcome, we already know what the outcome is going to be? Seems to lend itself to a lot of grandstanding.
That's always been the case. I mean, Robert knows that just as well as anybody. I mean, it's always more about hearing the senators talk. But we do, the American people do get to see Judge Jackson. And it's like that's really valuable, I think. Bob, what do you think?
Gayle, it is the United States Senate. I'm never surprised to see a little grandstanding in this chamber.
Very true.
That sort of sums it up
Spot on.
very accurately, I think. Spot on. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Jan and Robert. Thank you so much.